$6.2 trillion. I've never signed anything with a T on it.
The first round of emergency funding for small businesses ran out after just 14 days. And whether you got a piece of that $342 billion seemed to depend a lot on which state you're in. Say you're in California. For every dollar of eligible payroll there, the Paycheck Protection Program handed out a little less than 40 cents. But states like Kansas, North Dakota, and Nebraska ended up getting twice as much. That's led some people to say that politics might have something to do with it. And in fact, red states did receive about 20 cents more for every dollar of payroll compared to blue states. That's according to a Newsy analysis. But there is another important difference that is probably a better explanation for why money flowed to these states. That's the community banking system. Community banks are small traditional banks that have a close relationship with customers in a specific area. They've been disappearing for years, their business swallowed up by the big commercial banks like Bank of America, Chase, and Wells Fargo. It used to be that about 40% of banking assets resided in community banks. Now it's only 12%. But community banks remain strong in rural areas where they still make up more than 70% of bank offices.
Where I live, Madam Speaker, the banker knows the farmer, the banker knows the barber, the banker knows the cafe owner.
So what's that mean for the PPP? Well, the program was rolled out so quickly that the biggest banks reportedly were scrambling to work out their liabilities and to verify customer information. Smaller banks pushed applications through based on pre-existing relationships, and they ended up making 60% of the loans, while customers at the big banks were sitting around and waiting. The relationship between community bank offices and PPP funding is much stronger than any other factor we looked at, including politics. This was great news if you were in places like North Dakota, Iowa, Maine, and Kansas, where community banks still make up more than 70% of all bank offices. But not if you're in places like Arizona, California, or Oregon, which are more dependent on the bigger banks. The way all this played out was especially hard on Nevada. The state is more at risk than any other according to a Federal Reserve study. But its community bank system is practically non-existent, just 27 branches out of hundreds in the state. The state ended up with less PPP money per person than any other, at least in the first round.
The yeas are 388, the nays are 5, with 1 present.
Bigger banks will likely be more on the ball in the second round of funding, which was signed into law Friday. The bill earmarks $60 billion for smaller banks, and experts say the money could be gone again in as little as 48 hours. Mark Fahey, Newsy, Washington.